Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. This is Deck Report, Season 4, Week number 9. And surprisingly, I'm not on Maliss this time. This time I'm with a different deck. Yeah, stay tuned, buckle your seatbelts, and I'll give the explanation as it goes along. But I'll give a TLDR before I show the profile. I did a video, which I will post in the description. That video doesn't have that many views, but I think it's one of those videos that people should be looking into when it comes to like this current format. And that video regarded whether or not rogue decks could actually make it this format, and whether or not like they're justified even though they did not top like a previous YCS, for example YCS Orlando. I kind of wanted to test the theory of trying out something different, see how it goes, and see if my knowledge of the current meta decks was good enough to help me play through the opposition with other decks in the format. And I will say I am very satisfied. Not only that, we saw from YCS Birmingham that rogue decks actually could do very well at high tier events if players know what they're doing. I'll give more thoughts on like the deck that I picked, but let's go straight to the deck profile. So triple Crystron, 3 Staros, triple 3 Tyvern, I will explain this, triple Smiter, double Sulfador, double Sulfonier, 1 C3. So these are the Crystron cards. I am playing a Crystron deck, however it's not a common Crystron variant. You can notice that already by the 3 Tyverns. And once you see the other engine that pairs alongside it, you will understand why it makes sense. So supplementary engine, we're playing 3 Genex Undying, 1 Genex Controller. I'll explain these later. Alongside these, we're playing triple Deep Sea Minstrel, double Atlantean Dragoons, 1 Poseidra, 1 Tidal, and 1 Heavy Infantry. We're on 3 Ash Blossoms, and that's the main deck. I mean, that's all the monsters. Spell cards, triple Inclusion, triple Droplet, Talents, Call by the Grave, Foolish Burial. I think that's as standard as it gets from spell cards. And for traps, triple Imperm, triple Impulse, and 1 Cluster. Main deck is 45 cards. Extract, Clockwork Knight, Pearl Anemone, SP Little Knight, Cyber Dragon Nova, Infinity, Typhon, Headless Catus, 2 of them, Dawn Dragster, Samurai Destroyer, Navy Dragon Mech, Quarren Gandrax, Yanzing Xiaofen, Sword Soul Supreme, and Genex Arms of Genex Return 0. Side deck. Triple Droll, triple Lancia, Thrust, Duster, Lightning Storms, triple Evenly Mashed, double Sullen Judgment. Alright, so what is this deck? You're probably wondering. This is what I call Genex Atlantean Crystron. So to explain the engines, Uh, I guess I should talk about how I arrived to the conclusion of playing Crystron in the first place. So, considering the fact that I've been playing Maliss competitively for 8 weeks, I kind of wanted to try something different. However, I kind of wanted something that didn't have a lot of weaknesses, and if you decipher the format outside of a few key differences or a few key like weaknesses that a lot of decks have right now, this format is very hand trap heavy, and that detail is very important because you kind of want decks that navigate well through hand traps, but at the same time, it could keep up with the current meta decks or strategies. And that's how I arrived at the conclusion of playing Crystron in the first place. So, as far as the Crystron portion goes, like, I just felt like these numbers were correct. The deck is very consistent. It has like room for non-engine. It can play very good grind games. There are some real hard counters to this deck, like Droll and Logbird is a really big one, especially with this variant. Another strong card against our deck is Artifact Lancia. Dimension Shifter does not really hurt us that much, but it does to a certain degree. And I guess another one would be Abyss Roller. During this entire weekend, or this entire week, me playing the deck, I've only lost one match. It was against Pure Ryziel. It was against Abyss Dweller Detonator. And the number one reason I lost that match is because back then, when I was playing at that event, I did not have Typhon in my extra deck. Right after that match concluded, I reached the conclusion that Typhon should be my extra deck, and I just put it in my extra. I'll explain the rest of the extra deck as we go along. Now that I explained why I play Crystron, let's talk about the side engine that we're playing here. So there's a lot of different variants of Crystron that are running around. There's the Kashtira version, there's an Azamina version, there is like the Adventure Pile version. I don't think a lot of people are on this, like the Atlantean route. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to play Dominus Impulse in my Crystron deck, but outside of Cyber Dragon Nova and Infinity, I needed to make sure that whatever I pair well with Dominus Impulse had no real impact and like no hand trap constraints. Like one example of a match that we know where hand trap constraints come with Dominus Impulse was, I think, Dinkabui's top 4 match. I think it was against the Mermaid Atlantean deck where he had a Fed Veiler alongside Dominus Impulse. He resolved the Impulse first, so he could not use his Effect Veiler. I just did not want to run into that situation and make sure that every card is playable, and that's what made me arrive at the conclusion of playing just an engine or just playing a different pair of hand traps that just does not conflict with Impulse. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do this. And so I basically traded the Terror Top Taketomborg brick with the Undyne with Genex controller. So this is essentially what Cherubini does if you play the Speedroid engine. However, you are using your normal summon for this. But I just felt like just having a normal summon that just does not care about Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler or like Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs, like, was just good enough. The other real cool thing is like the Genex controller does have like an extra hit target, and it is a machine type monster. So you don't care if you're locked into extra decks for machines with your Crystrons, with like the ARM Genex 0. So yeah, that's one thing about Genex controller. It is a hard brick. This is one card you just don't want to draw. If you draw this, like the Undyne is kind of dead. But the results that I had by playing this engine just outweighs the cost. So with the Genex Undyne included, I kind of wanted to play like something else that could pair well with Undyne outside of just the Crystron cards. And that's how I arrived at the conclusion of the Mermail, I don't know why I say Mermail, the Atlantean cards. So, if you saw YCS Birmingham, Atlantean Mermails did make top 4, and multiple of them made like top cut. And if you notice the pattern, both in YCS Orlando and in Birmingham, Atlantean did top. So I can tell you right now with assurance that any deck that can play the Atlantean engine, it's just going to be very well positioned this format. Yes, this does have the weakness of Dimension Shifter, and it does have the weakness of Artifact Lancia, at least specifically with Minstrel, but everything else you should be okay with. The really cool thing about Minstrel is that there is no real downside with Minstrel. This is one of the reasons why I am maxing on Tris Tavern, like compared to like other Crystron lists. Most Crystron lists just play 1. I play 3 because it is discard fodder for the Deep Sea Minstrel and for Poseidra, as well as Tidal. And just having more fodder for that, just gets you to your place better, just was a good enough fit for the criteria of this deck. Deep Sea Minstrel is just a really powerful card. I don't even care if I go second and I draw this card. Me going second means that I can just snipe for hand traps that I just don't want to be interacted with while trying to defeat the entire main board that my opponent has made for me with the Crystron cards. But yeah, Crystron is already really good against hand traps. What Minstrel does for the deck is that it gives you the ability of just making whatever import that you want against whatever your opponent has interaction against you. Also, if you open this in your opening hand, you have a way of beating Dominus Impulse as well as beating Dolan Lockbird when you are comboing off with the Crystron strategy. And this is where the Genex engine comes in. With the Genex engine, you can bridge into your Deep Sea Minstrel by just sending Dragoons. If you go second, another really cool thing that Genex Undyne does is that Genex Undyne can also send Dragoons in order to grab Poseidra. Shoutouts to Kyle Wallace. He made top 64 in YCS Birmingham with Crystron, and he played Poseidra in his list. So he arrived at the same conclusion I did. Poseidra is just really powerful when you go second. In his case, he only played a second Poseidra just so he can just have a discard target for the bounce effect. I opted to just play the heavy infantry alongside the Dragoon because just adding extra pressure of just eliminating multiple cards with Poseidra while also kickstarting your Crystron engine is just really, really powerful. Another really cool thing about this is that Poseidra being level 7 actually comes up. And this is where the extra kit deck comes in. Poseidra being level 7 makes Chaofeng a lot easier, and it also makes the Navy Dragon mech as well. And I'll explain. I'll talk about Navy Dragon Mech in a bit. A lot of people don't like this card, but I actually love it. Like, once I get to extra deck, I'll explain everything a lot better. But yeah, in conclusion, I really like the Atlantean cards. You don't have to play Crystron like this. However, I do highly recommend it. Like, this has worked very, very well for me. I have no regrets playing this engine. I did brick on the Genex controller like 3 or 4 times, but I can tell you right now, every time I drew the controller, it was not an unwinnable game. It was just annoying that I had it as a card in my hand, but it wasn't something that just lost me the game outright. So I was okay with that. Talking about non-engine real quick, like, this is something you don't see in Crystron, but it just pairs very well. I think any deck that can play this card right now should be playing this card. Like, it's just way too good not to play. Just to pair alongside it, I'm playing the Imperms on this. I don't have to explain the spell cards. I think everything in the spell trap, in the spell portion, is just like fairly generic. Let's go with the extra deck real quick. So, my review of Navy Dragon Mech, this came up for me way more than other Crystron players. So, there would be often times where my opponent tries to like beat my entire board, and part of the situation, whenever it comes to the board that is being made, I would have LS Skeletas like in this in the main monster zone. They would pop it, and with LS Skeletas I summon C3. So something I would do, and this came up for me like 4 times, I would C3 drag the LS Skeletas and synchro these two into Navy Dragon Mech, and use the Navy Dragon Mech to just negate almost their entire board. I would do this like often in like the main phase. I've done this in battle phases as well. Like, yeah, I really like the Navy Dragon Mech. So that's something to consider. Not many people have this situation come up, but in my case it did. And that's just one of those plays you should know about. So the other thing is it is a water monster. So even if you're locked into machines, even if you're locked into waters, which I will get to in a second, this is just very well positioned. There's also the cool interaction where you would Ash Blossom or you would Minstrel, and then you pop this and you grab back the Ash Blossom or the Minstrel back to your hand. So that's something very relevant to bring up. I already talked about the Genex. This is just here because Genex controller can make this. This card is also not common in Crystron. You can also make this with the Genex controller. You can also make this with the Minstrel as well. And this card is really busted in Crystron. Like, you banish from your graveyard a lot. So that just gives you extra fuel for like this card. Like against like Ryziel, they have a really hard time outing this as well. They cannot detonator to pop this. This can just banish 2 cards like on your turn board, like on the board. And something really cool. Let's see if I'm not misremembering anything. Yeah. So something really cool is that if you have Crystron Cluster, something you can do is with the cluster, you target your own Sword Soul you can banish to protect your Sword Soul, and then with your Sword Soul you get 2 banishes. So the cluster can just become 2 banishes instead of 2 pops if you pair it with the Shingen. So that also helps you like get rid of other very annoying cards. Like for example the Mitsurugi monsters. With Fire Kings also being very popular now, well, most likely gonna be popular in the future because of Dinkabui's like YCS concession. This card is also very good against that matchup. I don't know if people know about the Xiaofen combo. I think this is very common in the Azamina list. You can just search tuners with this. But if you play Poseidra, you can summon it with Poseidra as well. Everything else I think is standard. Well, not everything else. I already explained Typhon. This is standard. These 2 are standard. This is not standard. So why is Curl Anemone in this deck? So I'm going to show you something real quick. So this is a 2-card combo. Basically this would be Genex Undyne plus like any Crystron. It doesn't have to be specifically Tristaros, it can be a low level one. But basically it's a way of getting rid of the Genex Undyne and just turning it into something that is like necessary in the deck. Like, see, like right here, with the Anemone, you just bring back Tristaros, and now Tristaros becomes a safety net for your combos if you get hand trapped. And now you can just inclusion at the cluster. You can pop that for Sophodor. Sophodor was summoned from Sulfurnier. That's why we're not machine locked. Now we are machine locked. This would turn into Elasketas. Elasketas just grabs you anything back. It doesn't have to be specifically like inclusion. We summon Citri, we summon Sophodor, we use the Elasketas effect and we bring back the Tristaros, and you just pass turn. Like, this is just one of those weird situations that you can get where you kind of want to just get rid of your Genex Undyne as a body. You can just make combos involving Genex Undyne. You can just leave Genex Undyne on the board and make stuff like, for example, Satellite Warrior, which I do not run in my extra. But yeah, that's the whole reason behind Coral and Anemone. I did like it. Be mindful that that combo that I just showed does lock you into water and it locks you into machines. So you cannot make Nova, you cannot make Infinity, you cannot link you into Speed as well. You cannot make Dawn Dragster either. But it's still really good. Like, this also pairs well with the Atlantean cards. Like, something really weird that could come up is you can bring back, like, for example, heavy infantry. You can bring back heavy infantry, and heavy infantry gives you an extra normal summon for a Sea Serpent, so you can just normal your thief, your minstrel, and then you have your actual normal summon for a Crystron, or something else, like for example Genex Undyne. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, Coral Anemone is very flexible in anything that plays the Atlantean engine. Outside of that, that's the aesthetic. So, side deck. So, I'll start with Sullen Judgment first. Crystron is already really strong against a lot of oppositions if they get to resolve their combo. However, there will be situations where you just want a hard stop against specific matchups. I kind of want to play Solemn Strike before this, but I also like Sullen Judgment because there will be times where you see your opponent's hands and you see a lot of board breakers, and then gauging on what you saw in their hands with Mistral, you can gauge whatever you want to negate with your Sullen Judgment. Like, for one example is, let's say you saw 2 Bonfire bonfires in your opponent's Ryzel hand. Which, fun fact, I saw double bonfire a lot this past week. So like that's something you don't want to negate with Sun Judgment because like you already know that they're going to arrive at the conclusion that they're just going to resolve bonfire even if you negate it the first time anyway. One good example is if you do see double bonfire but you see no other playable cards, you can end on this and infinity and just Nova infinity, like you can infinity negate then Sun Judgment negate. So that is another option as well. So evenly matched. I really like this card. I know that this does conflict with Artifact Lancia. I know that our deck is a deck that is vulnerable to Lancia, so you don't always get to resolve this card when you want it. However, I felt like this format, a lot of people are not respecting this card. Like, yes, the card is not really that good. However, we're getting to a point where a lot of people are just not respecting it. Like I seen Mitsurugi Ryzel players just lose to this card because they are not main decking the Purification Trap. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. If this card resolves and you have your Crystron engine in line, that game is unlosable. Like you should be able to win that game no matter what. I just wanted to be as efficient as I could with my board breakers. That's why you see like 7 board breaker cards in here. Maliss is a very tough matchup, and it's not even the Maliss engine itself. It's not really their boss monster. It's specifically White Binder. White Binder is a problem for your deck. So any combo or any way you can just stop the White Binder from resolving, this card is just very good. And Drone Lovebird, this is good against all Ryzel versions. This is also good against the Crystron Mirror Match, like depending on what they have. Yeah, I don't regret playing Draw this past week. It does conflict with Dominance Impulse, so be careful with that. And yeah, that's the deck. I hope you guys found this informative. I hope you found this to your liking and understanding. I really like this deck. I do love Maliss, don't get me wrong. Like I would keep playing Maliss like for the rest of the format. Especially with YCS Rhode Island being at the same time as Alliance Insight format. You kind of want to be prepared for that format, and I know Maliss is just going to be one of those decks that will be really represented there. But I kind of just wanted to try something rogue. Also, it's already obvious, but with how popular Maliss is at the moment, a lot of people are just countering Maliss right now. And just playing something that's not Maliss is just really good for you. Like for example, you don't have to worry about the supplement of Bestials. Yes, the Lancia and Chaos Hunter do hurt against you, but it's not super unwinnable. Like you can still play around Lancia and play around all those cards. This deck can play more non-engine or better non-engine than Maliss does. So that's another thing that we have to our advantage. I just rambling. That's it for me. Keep practicing and keep dueling.